Hey everybody, welcome back to the Print 3D channel. Today is July 13th, and that means day 194 of the 3DP 365 project. And on today's episode, we printed out this very cool notched vase that we created in Fusion 360, so stick around. Hey everybody, welcome back, and thank you for joining me here for day 194 of the 3DP 365 project. As always, down in the description there's a fact section. There's also the MatterHackers affiliate link. If you're in the market for some new filament, just use that MatterHackers affiliate link and you really help out the channel. On today's episode, we modeled in Fusion 360 and then 3D printed this very cool vase. And our print turned out awesome. I am super happy with the results. This is exactly what I imagined it would look like and exactly how I modeled it in Fusion 360 too. This is the same basic principle as we used when I created my Elegant Vase, which you can watch here. The only difference is we added some geometry to create some notches within the actual body of the vase. And I'll show you how we did that in Fusion 360. Okay folks, so here we are in Fusion 360, and like I mentioned before, the process for creating the actual vase part of this vase is very similar to the way I did my Elegant Vase. So I'm just going to walk you through the timeline and talk about a couple of aspects of this. I won't go through the whole modeling process because that would take a long time to do. So the first thing we did is we created our base sketch, which is the small footprint of the base, and this was 100 millimeters. The next thing we did is we did our project point, which puts a point right on the intersection of this green line and the geometry of this sketch. Once we had that down, we put our center rail in to determine our height, and here we made this 350 millimeters tall. The next thing we did is we anchored our spline to that point that we projected and created our curve, and make sure it ends at 350 millimeters or the sweep object won't work properly. And of course, the next thing we added was our sweep. After that, I created a sketch for the notches, and those were set up so I could put, this is for the larger notch. So I basically set this right where I wanted to. You can see where the intersection is almost dead center middle there. And once I had my sketch in position and I was happy with it, I extruded it just a little bit, just so I had some geometry to run my circular pattern, which I did next. Once I had my circular pattern, I did another extrude, and I used the join command within the extrude menu to make these notches within the actual vase. Once I had that done, I went in and I did a small fillet on these edges here. The next thing I wanted to do was to create the sketch for the smaller notches. And I started with a basic sketch. I did another extrude. Once I had the extrudes done, we move this forward in the timeline. I did another, here's the extrude here, you can see it. And then once I had that, I did a circular pattern. I moved them into position. Moved them up where I wanted my notches to be. I did move them around a little bit a couple times, and what I ended up doing was doing an extrude and then moving them into position because the notches weren't quite long enough and they were leaving flat areas at the top. They weren't quite long enough. Once I had that done, I did another fillet on all the edges just to make sure we had a nice smooth surface for everything. And then I combined everything just to make sure everything was good. If we turn off our sketches here, you can see the final model. Once you have your model sketched and modeled and you're all happy with it, what you need to do is go under this Make menu and go to 3D Print. Make sure you select the mesh. And if it's multiple meshes, you'll see multiple objects here, so you'll have it right. I did not use the Send to 3D Print utility. I just trusted Fusion 360 to create good geometry. And you can preview the mesh. I can click on this, and it may take a second to preview the mesh. And it'll give you a triangle count, too, once it finishes previewing. So we have 96,000 triangles. That's not too bad. So I'll turn that off. And once you're happy with it and you don't want to go back and make any changes, just hit OK and you can export out your STL file and then send it over to your favorite slicer. And that's how we created this very cool notched elegant vase here in Fusion 360. Okay, so you saw how I created this in Fusion 360, and it's a pretty simple process. It's pretty much the same process as I used for my Elegant Vase models. The only difference is we created some geometry to create the notches within the center of the vase. Once our modeling was done, we sent our STL file over to Simplify3D for slicing. In Simplify3D, we used a 0.2 millimeter layer height and we enacted vase mode. And if you're unfamiliar with vase mode, it's the single corkscrew outline printing method. Basically, your extruder will lay down one continuous line of filament and slowly raise up until it completes the model. And it's a very cool printing method. And we ran this out at 60 millimeters per second. The total print time was about 9.5 hours for 350 millimeters of build volume. And I think the print turned out awesome. I am super happy with the results. I love this design, it's very, very cool, and I definitely will gMaxSize this at a later date. But for now, I'm very happy with the print. There are no blobs, there are no globs, there are no layer skips. The surface finish is really, really nice. For vase mode, it's actually pretty sturdy in the center. It's pretty flexible at the top because it's only one perimeter. But in the center, because of all this geometry, it's actually pretty sturdy. And I'll post the files up on Thingiverse so you guys can download and print this yourself. And it's definitely a functional item. If you printed this with multiple perimeters, I think it would hold water and would act really good as a good household item, and you could probably use this as an actual vase. Because it is a little bit wider at the bottom with a big midsection and a narrow top, which is a typical design of most vases. And I think this design is very, very cool, and I'm really happy with the results. And I definitely will be printing out this and some other materials and finishing it in the future. Well, that about wraps it up for day 194 of the 3DP 365 project. I hope you guys found this episode interesting and informative. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share those videos, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.